Welcome to Mindful School Marketing, your go-to podcast for personal and professional growth.
We're school marketers, business owners, and moms passionate about connecting other school professionals with tools and strategies for success.
We love solving problems, exploring new ideas, and thinking outside the box. Let's transform your school and life starting right now. This episode is brought to you by the Small School Leaders Conference, happening online February 3rd through 6th. Discover strategies to help your school thrive.
Learn more at smallschoolsconference.com. See you there.
Welcome to Mindful School Marketing. I'm Aubrey Bursch.
And I'm Tara Clays. Today we're joined by Rebecca Malotke-Meslin. Rebecca is the owner of Pleasantly Aggressive Coaching and Consulting. We're so glad to have her back. As a leadership coach and speaker, she helps early and mid-career women leaders in schools and nonprofits lead more confidently, authentically, and unapologetically. Welcome, Rebecca. Welcome back.
I'm so glad to be back with both of you.
And we're excited to have you back. I always enjoy our conversations here on the show and off the show. And Rebecca, we've had so many great, conversations, especially about women leaders and women in schools. I'm curious, this has come up before, like that women in schools are kind of the go-to person for everything in a lot of situations. And so when you look across the leaders you coach, especially right now, what are you noticing about their stress levels and the roles they're being asked to play?
Yeah, I think, the old adage of I wear a lot of hats. We hear this in schools all the time, I think from all of our leaders, men and women. And yet it's one of those things that makes it more normalized to take on way too much and to do more with less. And that's kind of what I'm seeing right now at small schools, at large schools, frankly. And I also work in the nonprofit space as well. And I'm seeing a lot of, hey, we're pulling back on the budget. We have less, but we need you to keep doing more. And unfortunately, when I think about the women that I coach and the women that I'm talking to out in this space, what I hear a lot of is this kind of quiet acquiescence where we say, I love my school so much. I love the kids so much. I love this community so much that women keep giving and giving and giving. And there really doesn't seem to be an end in sight. There isn't this moment where it stops and we start moving in the other direction where we say, okay, now we're going to take these things off your plate because things have stabilized. Or now we're going to give you more money because things have stabilized. It usually becomes a trend in the direction of more responsibilities with less resources. And, the reason I started doing this work because my fears were really realized and seeing women leaving their roles altogether and burning out, like leaving or burning out or some combination of both of those things. And I think that trend for right now, I just see continuing on. And that, again, that's why I'm doing this work, because I'm trying to create those supports for those women, but also really having more conversations like this where we're making the most senior leaders, especially board members, more aware that that's what's happening in these spaces.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. We all three are women, and we know that school culture and even the culture in our country celebrates, a leader who can take care of everything, right? We got it all. We can do it all. How do you see that praise or admiration of that approach masking a deeper issue that leads to burnout?
Well, I think first and foremost is that acknowledgement of women as caregivers, right? Like we're kind of playing into and praising those things in women that are reinforcing a lot of gender stereotypes to say that yeah, you can do all of these things and look how great you are at them. And it's reinforcing the messages we're getting from society and our culture that this is where you're supposed to be. This is what it's supposed to look like. And so again, it normalizes it, which makes it really hard to say this doesn't feel right or I feel overwhelmed. It's become a badge of honor to say that I am burnt out in a lot of ways. I'm so busy, I'm so overwhelmed. And, and it's a delicate thing, right? Of saying, I don't want women to feel alone in that. I want them to hear that other women are experiencing that, but not in this way of oh, you got that too, me too. Oh, ha, ha, ha. I don't want that to be the narrative either. I want it to be yeah, I'm experiencing that too. And I don't think this is okay. Do you think this is okay? Because we both don't think this is okay. So how are we going to fix it? Right. And then going into that, I think it's time to push back. I think it's time that we push back and say, thank you for the praise. And so in some cases, like, thank you for the promotion or thank you for the raise. And what I really need is something different. What I really need is less of a workload, is to not work 24/7, is to feel some sort of balance, is to not be worried about my physical health, my mental health, right? Because I'm so overwhelmed. So it's trying to bring women together, again, have conversations. And while we can see that we're in this together, it's not that it's normal. It might be common. That doesn't make it normal. And so if it's not normal, how do we get back to a place where it can feel a little more normal for the women that are experiencing that?
I think I love this topic so much. It comes up so often. So I host monthly small school leaders meetups, which is just like a free networking thing for leaders. This comes up all the time. It's like, okay, I have to handle the fundraising, the admissions, the marketing, and all these things, and like, yet I can't get my work done. And it's like, what are the skill sets to get that done? But you can't get that done, right? You can't get that done.
That's the thing. And I saw this, I'm sure it was a TikTok or something, but it was a guy saying, like, I am not going to kill myself because of leadership that doesn't allow you to hire more people. The repercussions of, and I'm not going to even say poor leadership, because I don't even, sometimes that's the case, but it's really like this lack of awareness that there's only so much that humans can sustain in the workplace, and leaning so heavily on their consciousness, leaning so heavily on their caregiving, and leaning so heavily on these pieces of them, that you're breaking them down and saying, well, that's all we can do with the money that we have, or that's all we can do, right? I think is cruel. And at some point it feels like exploitation. I was having this conversation with them. I'm like, when do we start calling this exploitation, right? But like, we've really normalized it in especially small independent schools. And I worry about those leaders. Like, I'm sure in the groups that you're having and that you're hosting, Aubrey, that we've created a narrative where it's like, well, that's what it takes to lead, to be a head of school at a small school. And I just don't buy it. I really believe that there has to be a better way. And it takes a collective effort to say, like, something's got to give, something's got to change. And I do believe this is where women can be really powerful, and their knowledge and expertise to say, like, we need to problem solve this. We need to find a different path.
I think that's so important. I see this all the time, and it's normalized. It's like, oh, I too hold 15 different 15 different hats, and then juggling 16 different plates, and blah, 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 blah. And so it's like that normalization of like, oh, this is what it's like to work in a small independent school, or to work in, this environment. And I think, that is a very dangerous mindset if we're not saying, hey, like, let's just take a second and stand, back up and like, let's review. Is this the way to go? Like, is this helpful for both the school and the person in the position? I'm curious, like, along those lines, if we're thinking about it, like, can you, share, maybe it's a story or just an example of, like, let's say someone is being that person who we like giving and giving. I mean, because you care about your school, right? So you're doing the things, you keep doing, you keep giving. You're kind of like this selfless leader who's, at it all the time, doing all the things. Have you seen them been able to, like, maybe put boundaries in place or have difficult conversation? And what sort of transformation have you seen along that way? And did it help that leader? I'd love to, give that kind of example to someone right now if they're in this position.
I'm gonna share a story, and it's a little bit of a cautionary tale. This has happened in more than one of my clients, where they started developing physical symptoms. One had to take a medical leave that was stress induced. So very physical symptoms, like an autoimmune disease, that was very much because of the stress that she was carrying and the workload that she had. And, those kind of inflection points, I think, are what we want to avoid. But for a couple of my clients, like, it was that moment that they said, like, this is not sustainable, right? Like, this is not sustainable. I think one of the sad parts, though, still is that they were blaming themselves, that they were very much putting themselves, like, I wish then they're like beating themselves up about it, right? So, like, they're sick, and now they're beating themselves up about being sick. And so like so many of our conversations around like, I love that you want to take responsibility for your actions. And I think we all should feel that way. We want to take responsibility for the things we have done or haven't done to create and set those boundaries and to keep them. And we also need to like take a beat and say, these are systems we're working in. Like these are systems and cultures within these organizations and environments that, again, have been praised and normalized in a way that it makes sense that you would do what you have done, right? Like in some ways, it was an expectation of you. So it's a little bit of an act of defiance to say, like, I'm not going to do these things. And that's where that push and pull comes in. If you're not really a confrontational person, it can feel like internal or external confrontation. And so I think setting of those boundaries really for them came down to like, I need to stay well. Like my first responsibility is to my wellness, is to my physical wellness. And so I got to get that straight first. And once I have that straight, right, I can start to say, okay, I'm feeling better now. What were those things that activated me or triggered me? What were those things that really were causing the most stress for me? And I think that's a scary process to go through, is defining what parts of our jobs are requiring the most of us, whether that's, like when I was in admissions, right? I knew that during like the height of admission season, we were putting out decisions was going to be the most stressful for me. And it was very much a necessary part of my job, but I had to start creating systems around it to say, okay, during that week, when those decisions are going out, like I am working 9 to 5 and I am delegating as much as I possibly can and all the other realms. Whereas before I had kept doing all of the other things, and then big decision week with big emotions, lots of difficult conversations. And then I would run myself ragged, and then I'd be like useless to everyone, especially my kids and my family, for like the next 2 weeks. And so by taking some of those other things off my plate and saying, this is the one thing that I really need to be doing right now, how can I move some other things away, push them off, delegate to somebody else? So boundaries for me isn't just about like saying no to things. It's about really like looking at the landscape of what you're responsible for, and not, not doing that thing that we sometimes do where we think we're the only one that can do it all, but saying like, okay, this piece I need to be doing, and these other things, it doesn't necessarily have to be me. And there might be some logistics we got to figure out, but I don't have to do all of these things, even though I think I'm awesome and great.
Yeah, that's a perfect segue to what I want to ask you next, which is
Yeah.
about delegating. Um, I mean, I think part of the I can do it all is part of that story of not delegating, but also I think we probably all have a little bit of nobody can do it quite as well as me. Or I know for me, oftentimes it's going to take me just as long or longer to teach somebody or assign this than it is for me to just jump in and do it and check it off my list. So let's talk a little bit about delegation and what's happening there, and maybe how to overcome those mental hurdles that prevent us from doing what we should do, as you were just saying.
Yeah, I think, Tara, the things you just described are like the most common things I hear from clients. And I actually give like a talk that's just about delegation because I, my experience has been that men are really good at delegation. I would say I've also worked for some men who like over delegate. And I bring that up because it is a very masculine trait that, I always like feel like did boys get like pulled aside and taught how to do this in like elementary school, and like like they've just kept doing it for their whole careers in a way that like we weren't. But I think I've seen over delegation, and I think whether we consciously or unconsciously have seen that in the past, it looks a lot like being put upon. It looks a lot like being dumped on. That can be one of the hurdles for women, is that they don't want to be that guy or that person. They don't want to be the one because they're so aware of how hard everyone around them is working. And so this idea of like, well, who am I? Who am I to take it off my plate and go put it on somebody else's? Like they're working just as hard as I am. We're in this together, like, right? So I'm going to hold on to it. So that's one of the barriers that I see. It's faster if I do it myself. Yeah. I mean, I'm guilty of this still. Like I have a VA and I still am like, I'm just going to do it myself. Right. So like I don't listen to my own advice sometimes, and I get why that's such a barrier. Here's the way that I shift that one in particular is, as you're thinking about delegating to a person in particular, there's two things to remember. One is that that person is not you. And what I mean by that is I'm bringing 20 years of experience to something, and I'm expecting this person who has no experience or very little experience to be at my level. And so my patience is thin, and like how long it's going to take them to get on board and to figure this out and to, right? And so I have to remember clearly that like, oh, yes, it's going to take me time to explain this to you. And it's also going to take me time to check in with you, and also going to take me time to teach you. And that is a worthwhile investment in the long term. I know in the short term, it doesn't compute. In the long term, it absolutely will. And that's for most of us in our schools and our businesses, like that's what we're thinking about. We just lose sight of it in the moment. And so we have to recenter it. The second piece of that is, when you're in a school and you're not delegating, because of that, it's just going to take too much time. The phrase that I always use is you're robbing your people of the opportunity to learn. You're taking that away from them. And if you actually are trying to build an organization that's sustainable and you want people to have diversified skills and you want to be able to hand these things off, if you don't start the delegation process early, right, and often, you're going to have a workforce that doesn't know how to do anything except for the very small thing that you taught them when they first started. And the last thing I'll say about this, because I'm very passionate about this, I'm glad you brought it up, is that I try to I try to remind my clients, like, when was a time where somebody gave you something, right, delegated a task to you that maybe you weren't quite ready for, and you learned so much. You learned so much from it. Somebody had faith in you. They gave you this task. You did it, right? And you learned from it. If you hoard everything, you're not giving somebody else that same chance. And the repercussions will be great, right? You have more on your plate, but also those people, like, nobody wants to stay in a job where they're not learning new things. So if you can reframe it really around this idea of, I'm not dumping on people, right? I'm not demanding things of people. What we're really doing is training, teaching. And yes, there's the added benefit that like ultimately I'm going to move this task off of my plate and onto someone else's so that I can focus on things that truly, truly only I can do. And that distinction, I think, is one of the harder things too.
That was so interesting. Thank you so much. It's such a good refresher. I think we all need it. And I love the part about the growth. Like that, I mean, I remember being so hungry for learning new things. And like people would give me things that I was like, I don't really know. I don't really know why, what I'm doing, right? But I was really driven to learn and grow from that experience. So I love that because I think that appeals to our educators and people working in schools. Obviously, our students are growing and learning. Giving other people opportunities to do the same makes a lot of sense, right?
Absolutely.
So I am so curious because this kind of leads into the next question I have, which is, this comes up all the time. It's like, and I mentioned it at the beginning of the podcast, like I am now taking on more. Let's say our school restructured, like things happened. We lost a person. They left for whatever reason. There's this, all of a sudden, like things are landing on my plate that I wasn't doing before. I'm curious, like, a lot of people just kind of, accept it, right? But their role has technically expanded. So how, especially our women leaders, how are they supposed to kind of navigate that and advocate for what they're worth, knowing that their role has expanded?
Yeah. And I think this also, it also goes back to the start of our conversation, which is that this, kind of notion that like, oh, we're all pitching in and we're all doing more, right? I think that can deter women from saying, well, no, you actually have to pay me more to do this. Like it feels like the opposite of being a team player. It feels like the opposite of being a giver. And those things really cut to the core for a lot of women because that's not who they want to be. That's not how they want to show up at work. And sometimes it gets reinforced by like others in our community, even other women sometimes, to be like, well, we're all giving more. And you're like, yeah, I'm not going to unless I get paid. And then you kind of can be subtly ostracized, right? For like not being a team player and not joining in with everybody. Like you just don't care as much as everybody else. And so we need to be aware of that narrative that can exist and how it can reinforce. So I, really try hard to talk to women about, like, if you're being, I'm going to say voluntold or told or asked, whatever it looks like, to take on more responsibility, you always have the opportunity to say, what pay increase does that come with? Right? Like, these are choices you get to make. You can say no. I'm not saying there's no repercussions to it. I'm just saying these are choices. So you have to weigh the risks of it all, but being able to say, like, talk to me about that. Here's the crazy thing. A lot of times your CFO, head of school person is anticipating that conversation. Like, they probably have a number ready. Like, oh, we actually have this stipend ready to go because we're kind of expecting it. The people who don't ask don't get it. The people who ask get it. There's always pools of money at schools. This is the dirty little secret, like, our CFOs don't want us to know, but, like, there's always pockets of money to make things happen. And when something needs to happen, when it is a strategic initiative, when it is something that the board wants, when it is something that is like everybody is driving forward on this, they will put the money there. Right. And so if you're being asked to serve to do all this extra labor and it's being added to your roles and responsibilities, the question is simply, what is the compensation for this? And driving that point home. Here's why this is so important. Number one, imagine this happens, right? And there's 5 women at a school and all of them are asked to do more with no pay increase, right? There's no mention of a pay increase. You're just asked to do more and none of them speak up. None of them say everything. And you might have a school leader who's like, great, like, we were able to do this, right? And again, not necessarily intentionally exploiting them, but that's the end result. And this continues on. So 5 years later, this happens again. This is the expectation. This keeps happening. The roles continue to change. It becomes harder to recruit for those positions because now the laundry list of roles and responsibilities for that position without an increase in pay is significant. Okay. One of those people leave and they try to rehire for the position. And now they're going to have to pay that person a huge salary increase to replace that person. And you slowly see these 5 women, right, leaving and to just go off and do other things, maybe for more money. Once they're all replaced, you just suddenly saw a bump in your budget of, like, we're going to say $100,000. And now the board is upset and the budget's off and we don't know what's happening and why can't, right? It was doing your school a disservice because they did not have a balanced budget in my mind. They were not accounting for that additional labor. They were not compensating for that additional labor. And so for me, it's a problem for your school's budget when you don't ask for the money because it doesn't account for it in the budget. And yet that work is being done. And should that one individual leave, you're going to have somebody who comes in who wants that compensation and they're going to have to meet them because they got to fill the role. And so that's how my brain thinks about these things, is that I want you to do it for yourself. I totally want you to be selfish and get what you deserve. And also there is a greater good that you are serving. So when you feel like it's a push and pull, and that the language I always use is that there's, when women ask for raises in schools, we know that our end product is children. And we know that, like, dollars go to kids, right? And serving kids in programs, that there's this thing we have in our heads where it's like, well, if I get a raise, that means, like, the kids don't get new kickballs in the playground, or that the kindergartners have old crappy crayons. They won't get new crayons. That is not how this works, right? That's not how budgets work. But we, like, have made and told ourselves these stories about this. And I will tell you, when I've talked to women in groups about this, like, they start laughing because that's how they felt. And they've never said it out loud, but they very much are like, the kids need the money. The kids need this. Our teachers need this money. I'm not saying that they don't. I'm saying they do, and you do too. You deserve that. You are serving with great value to your institution, right? Like, that deserves to be compensated. There's a huge gender wage gap. Like, we're all underpaid people. Like, the statistics show it. So, like, it's not selfish in that regard, and it's not taking crayons out of the hands of kindergartners. And we need to, again, have these open conversations about it so that women see that that's not what's actually happening, and that all these dollars come out of very different buckets, and you need to be compensated for the work that you're doing and the value that you bring, and on a much greater scale.
I feel like there should be a poster about the crayons thing. That was, like, really
right?
powerful.
Right?
I like, we talked about just feelings. You know how, I mean, as women, I mean, I don't want to stereotype, but like, we feel a lot and we're connected to, the work. We obviously are there for a reason. I'm going to bring up like uncomfortable feelings in relation to this. This has been coming up a lot in my groups. I mean, with, a lot of schools are struggling in many ways. Like, when your school is financially struggling, right? So you have a school that they're financially struggling. They have told you they're going to either have to raise tuition, they're going to have to do all these things. And now you're at that, you can feel in your gut. I can almost feel that feeling. This happened to me when I was like working in schools during the recession. Like, you're like, I just got more added to my plate, but oh, the school's in a financial pickle. Like, do I ask for a raise, or do I just skate by until it's better and I can ask for, like, like that feeling of like, you're doing more and you need more, but like, you're also like, but the school, it doesn't have the money. So I'm curious, like, have you seen that? Like, how does one navigate that? Because I'm just putting on my school leader hat, and I know this comes up a lot.
Yeah. And I think, yes. So have I seen that? Absolutely. It's something that I talk to my clients about a lot. I think there's, and it comes in a couple different forms. Like, if you're in advancement or you're in admissions and you haven't met your numbers, like, how could I possibly ask for a raise in those situations? Or you're a teacher and you're relatively new and you're like, I don't know if I can ask for this. And then there's this overarching narrative, right? And I think the teachers feel it when we get the speech from the finance people talking about like, everybody's classroom budgets are either frozen or reduced this year. And so the messaging is very much like, there's no money, there's no money, there's no money, there's no money. And to be honest, a lot of that, I believe, is just a deterrent, right? We don't want to be frivolously spending on anything. We want to batten down the hatches. Yes. I don't believe that messaging should be taken so literally, right? That we're like, I can't ask for anything. Because again, as a senior administrator, I've realized, oh, there are pockets of money that we can use when necessary. Now, when we're talking about salaries, I think the challenge is that, again, we go back to like, how am I more deserving, right, than a classroom, or how am I more deserving than something else? Here's the deal. You don't get to decide that. That's not for you to decide. That is for your school's leadership to decide. That is for your head of school to decide. They won't know that you are interested in a raise. They won't know that you've done all this extra work, that you've added all these things to your plate, and that you believe it needs to be compensated unless you go after it and tell them. They can ultimately say, no, when we said we had no money, we really meant it. We have no money in the budget for this, right? Let them make that choice. Don't give yourself a no before they have. But I know that process of going in and being rejected is what prevents a lot of women and people in general from making that ask, from going after it. I've really gotten to that place where I say, no, I firmly believe that I deserve this. And I have added so much to my plate that when I look at comps, when I look to see like what other administrators at this level are making, at a school this size are making, I'm well below the average. I have a compelling argument. I'm going to go in and make it. And if they say no, it's not because I'm unqualified. It's not because I didn't do what I said I was going to do. It's not because I'm uneducated, right? It's simply because it's a budgetary issue, right? It's not personal. And I say all of this because a lot of times when we do go in to make that request, we make it very personal. And that goes back to those emotions that we're feeling about all of this. We make it very personal. And so if what's preventing you is truly the budget, then when you go in and get a rejection and they tell you because of the budget, you should feel like, okay, affirmed, it really is the budget, but I still advocated for myself. And here's the other fun fact. You've just greased the wheels, right? Like, now they know that you're thinking about it and that you're curious about it and you want this. And so when you go in and ask the next year, now there's a cycle for you of like, okay, I'm coming in. It's time. I'm going to ask again. Eventually they will break. Like, eventually they're going to get to the point where we're like, okay, like, we hear you, we see you. And yes, we're going to make something happen. But the squeaky wheel gets the oil and you got to grease those wheels. So even a rejection is not as hard of a rejection sometimes as we make it out to be. It really opens up a conversation. And here's the other thing, like, sorry, I'm going off, but like, it's not just for you, it's for the other women at your school and at other schools. When you start that conversation and we kind of put our foot down and say, like, I'm not going to keep working for peanuts and have you keep adding to my plate. you are speaking up for all the other women in your institution who are feeling the same way. And you're hopefully you can have conversations with them too, to say like, hey, like if we all come together, right, those same 5 women, if we all came together and said like, yeah, we're not doing this unless we're getting a stipend or unless we're getting compensated, it's really much harder for them to say no to all 5 of you than it is to say no to one of you. And again, they might still say no to say like, no, legit, we have no money in the budget. But if there is money, they're going to find a way to make it work.
This is so interesting and helpful. It's somehow reminding me of buying a car. It's that negotiating.
Yeah, absolutely. It's super uncomfortable, right?
It is. Yeah, it is hard. And something else that's hard is saying no, right? So that's the other part of this, right? Delegating and also saying no. So what are some scripts or some phrases that leaders can use to say no, or maybe no, not right now, while still honoring their relationships and their obligations?
There's a great quote out there that says something like, no is a complete sentence. And it absolutely is. That is grammatically correct. And I don't necessarily recommend that, to just be like, no, when somebody asks you to participate in something or do something. So that's at one extreme, is just the like flat out no. On the other extreme is the like over explaining, like, no, I mean, I'm not really sure if I can make this work, right? Where we open up a negotiation that maybe we don't want to enter into. And I think that middle ground is finding that language. So, for instance, I know that I had to go and ask, as I was leaving my last school, I was advising a club of students, and I had to find an advisor to take over for me. And, when, again, everybody's so busy. And I said, you know what? Like, I know everybody's busy. I'm going to ask some people, and I'm going to hope that they are honest with me about their boundaries, right? And so I went to our school counselor, who I thought would have been great for this. And she said, can I think about it? So that's my first thing to say, is when somebody asks you to do something, your first response should be, let me think about it, right? I'm going to tell you, most women are really uncomfortable saying no right away. And so I kind of take that off the table for a lot of this stuff and just say, like, think about it. Like, I want you to think about it. And I want you to craft a script that you're going to feel good about when you respond. So she said, can I think about it? And I said, absolutely. And she came back to me and she said, you know what, Rebecca? She's like, I don't have the bandwidth to do this right now. And I said, you know what? I'm so grateful that you set such a clear boundary for yourself. Because I wanted to reinforce to her, like, well done. Because it was student facing, which is the hardest thing to say no to, right? When like you see a club that's going to maybe not have an advisor. And she was like, yeah, and I was like, you don't have to explain yourself. I so appreciate you being honest with me and getting back to me quickly so that I can go like find somebody else. And do you have anybody else in mind that could do this? So many things we're asked to do, committees and review, groups, and, being the advisor for the play, the Thanksgiving right? All of this stuff. What you can do is, number one, if you feel uncomfortable saying no, is say, can I just take a little bit of time to think about it? 2 is getting back to that person quickly. 3 is not feeling the need to over-explain, but drawing your boundary to say, I do not have the bandwidth, which is going to be most of our answers. I do not have the bandwidth to do that right now. 4 is offering another person's name or another solution, which could be helpful. I think for women, that feels good to be able to say no and offer like another solution. Working in admissions, if I had to say no to a family, if I could refer them to another school, I felt so much better about it because I didn't feel like I was leaving somebody in the lurch. It's not necessary, but I think it'll make you feel good about saying no. And that's what I really want, is like, how can I ease the friction of saying no for women, and so they can get what they need, while also feeling good about it? Because if you just went off and said, no, sorry, Charlie, right? Like, that's not going to maintain the relationship that you're hoping to maintain. But I think those few kind of steps will leave both of you feeling like the relationship is very much intact. You feel really helpful, and you've also kept your boundary.
That's so wonderful. That's like a step-by-step of like all the things that we can think about. And I love the idea of like, we don't have to say no right away, right? Say, hey, let me think about that. And then it gives you a time to think and respond appropriately. Thank you for that. I'm curious, I think about all the school leaders out there who have to navigate, the people they report to, a lot of times the heads of school, and then also the boards. What is like one conversation or thing you would have loved to tell every school leader about like how, like either a tone to set, some boundaries to set, or something that they can have, like a conversation they can have with their board chair or head of school, either from the start of their position or where they are right now?
Oh my God, there's so many things. We talk so much about communication and, we use the term like open or clear communication. For me, the clarity of communication around roles and responsibilities, and I don't just mean a job description, although I do mean a job description too. The vast majority of the frustrations that I hear in my clients is that they're in a position with very unclear expectations. And my question is, how do you review that person? How do you measure that person? How do you promote that person? You can't do any of those things. There's also a lot of duplication of work, which then is like a poor use of resources. So for heads of school in particular, I think, especially for heads who are coming new into a position or maybe have had like some turnover in their leadership team, and that, org chart changes and things like that, is first priority is getting everybody really clear about their roles and responsibilities, like crystal clear individually and then crystal clear collectively, meaning sit down and talk and make sure that like this is in my line item. So I know who to go to for that thing. And I know I am not responsible for it, right? Hands off. I'm shocked at how frequently the messiness is still occurring. And I think it is because of turnover. And I think it is because of leadership changes. But if that's a piece of advice I could give to every head of school, because the people who are in those senior leadership positions and those director roles typically don't have the autonomy or the authority to be making changes in their roles, right? Like they're still at the mercy of what their head of school and that vision is. So the heads are really responsible for that. So that could have huge impacts on everything from morale to budgets, because we're using resources more properly, right? And more strategically, to the wellness of your employees, the efficacy of their work. Like it seems so simple, and yet it, again, I see it rarely executed well on a consistent basis.
Yeah, this is so helpful. Thank you for all of this information, Rebecca. Really appreciate it. We are going to move into rapid fire questions now as we're coming up on the end of our time. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
You did this last time. We should look up what your answers were. Let's see.
I know, that'll be interesting.
The first question is, if you could put one book as mandatory reading in the high school curriculum, what would it be?
I probably could remember what I said last time, but what would I say this time? This time I would say Unreasonable Hospitality. Not just because it's top of mind, because it's just amazing. And I think it would be great for high schoolers to read.
I love that. I just read that book for a book club. Fantastic book. What is one app you couldn't live without?
My calendar. I just live and die by it. I wish it was more interesting than that, but that's just it.
No, that's okay. And lastly, what are you reading right now? Well, second to lastly.
Well, I'm reading like 3 books right now. I've gotten used to reading more than one. The 2 that I'm listening to most actively right now are 10 to 25, which is a book about really like the motivations of adolescence from a teacher's perspective, from a leader's perspective, how to motivate people in this age group. It's really good. Heard him speak at the EMA conference, and the author speak at the EMA conference. He was phenomenal. The other one is Fans First, which is written by the owner of the Savannah Bananas, kind of in that unreasonable hospitality frame, but how to create an experience, because now I'm a business owner, how to create an experience for your clients, but really how to like create fans for your business. And I think it would really apply to schools as well.
All right, your answers last time, you said The Sum of Us, and then The Confidence Code.
Yeah.
And Audible.
I thought I said Yeah.
All right.
Very good stuff.
Last question, Aubrey.
Yes. So what is one great piece of advice you'd like to leave us with?
that as women, we have the blessing and the curse of being deeply caring, and we get to choose how much we give that caring and who we give it to. It is a resource, and we need to be more mindful of how we use that resource.
Great. Thank you. Wonderful advice. Great
Thank
tips. We really appreciate your joining us and sharing some good insights and some good things to think about as we move into a new year. So thanks.
Thanks so much, ladies. It's always a pleasure.
And where can people find you, Rebecca?
I am pleasantly aggressive everywhere. So pleasantly aggressive on TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook, but you can mostly find me on LinkedIn as Rebecca Malotke-Meslin. That's where I love to live and share my insights and my writing and tips and strategies, or at pleasantlyaggressive.com.
Thanks again, Rebecca. We're so grateful.
Thanks.
Have a great day.
This episode is brought to you by the Small School Leaders Conference, happening online February 3rd through 6th. Discover strategies to help your school thrive.
Learn more at smallschoolsconference.com. See you there. Thanks for joining us on the Mindful School Marketing Podcast.
We'd love it if you pop into iTunes and leave a review, 5-star preferred. Let us know how you like the show. It helps us improve what we're doing and helps others find us too.